Hey, gorgeous souls, and welcome to the Midlife Purpose Project. I'm your host, Katie Farinas, a yoga teacher and soul purpose coach. And just like you, I'm navigating the wild, beautiful, and sometimes messy terrain of midlife. This is the space where we unpack the shifts happening in our bodies, minds, and souls. We're diving deep into the questions that rise up when everything seems to be changing. Think of this as your toolkit for making sense of this powerful phase of life. We'll have honest conversations, belly laughs, maybe a few tears, and a whole lot of growth. We'll hear from experts on topics that matter to you in midlife, and I'll share yogic philosophy that has been helping humans live with more skill and ease for centuries. Because here's the truth. Everything you've been through, every challenge, every joy, every heartbreak has been training you for this. You're not broken, you're not lost, you're stepping into your power. So come on in, embrace the mess, the beauty, and the absolute magic of midlife. Let's journey together. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Midlife Purpose Project. Before we start the show, I just want to remind you to please go and sign up for my newsletter, my weekly newsletter. It's a great way to stay in touch. It's how I let everyone know about my latest offerings, whether they be new coaching offerings or masterclasses, workshops. It's where I send blog articles to. It's where we talk about what happened on the show this week and sometimes dive into a little bit more detail. It's where I share more practices that you can bring into your life to create a life that feels more aligned to your true self, that will help you find your purpose, that will answer a lot of those burning questions that we all have at this age. It's a one-stop shop for everything. So sign up using the link in my show notes or going to my website, katiefarinas.com. Okay, now, today we're going to talk about a concept called beginner's mind. But before we get to what that is, we are first going to talk about why we need it, why beginner's mind is so important. And I'll give you a little, I'll give you the short clip of it, which is basically that we get stuck in patterns, and those patterns prevent us from discovering our purpose, from fully transforming and evolving the way we can in this midlife season of our lives. And so we need to return to what's called beginner's mind. So with that being said, with that kind of preface, let's talk about why we need to return to beginner's mind. If you have reached midlife, you have likely experienced quite a few things in your life. And these experiences have brought a tremendous amount of life lessons. You've gained a lot of wisdom, but they also can create barriers to transformation, barriers to discovering your dharma or your soul's purpose, barriers to you evolving into the fullest, most abundant version of yourself. Because each experience we have leaves a psychological imprint, an imprint on our nervous system. And while we've all had a mix of what we would label as good and bad experiences in our lives, our brains have a tendency to store the negative ones. They store them with much more ease, with more clarity, with more intensity, and they store them often for a lifetime. And this is called the negativity bias. Experiences that generate difficult emotions like shame, fear, doubt, they stay in our memory bank and they impact our choices and they impact our thoughts and they impact our behaviors. So what is this negativity bias? It's our brain's tendency to focus on experiences and make decisions about what we believe about ourselves and the world based on the emotions generated from those negative experiences. So if you have a negative experience and it makes you feel fearful, would be an example, then you will likely try to stay away from anything that is similar to that you think will generate that same emotion. And this is not always conscious. In fact, it's often very unconscious. It generates that feeling. That feeling is very uncomfortable. It makes us feel unsafe in some way. And so we develop a core belief about ourselves or about life that then helps us to avoid experiencing that thing again. And I'm going to get into some examples. But the first question is, why would our brains do this? Why would our brains evolve to focus more on the negative and then the positive? That seems counterintuitive. Wouldn't we want to be focused more on the positive? Wouldn't our lives be better? Wouldn't we feel better if we focused on the positive? The answer to that question is yes, your life is better and you do feel better if you focus on the positive, but that's just not the way that our brains have evolved because our ancestors needed to stay alive. By imprinting negative experiences into their minds and their nervous systems, they stayed safe and they stayed alive. So we relied way back in our history very much on this part of our brain that we now call the lizard brain. It's the oldest part of the brain. It's all the way in the back of the skull, and a particular part of the brain called the amygdala. And the amygdala is responsible for processing emotions and particularly for processing fear and anxiety. And it plays a crucial role in forming emotional memories, right? So this is what I was talking about. You have an experience, it's a fearful experience. The amygdala says, whoa, that was scary. That was dangerous. I'm going to store that in my memory bank, and I'm going to try to protect you from experiencing that again. So its whole job is to sense danger and to keep us safe. And it served us really well during the evolution of the human species. Our ancestors learned that if they touched a certain plant and they got an itchy rash, that they should never touch that plant again. And they should also be vigilant as they were moving about, watching and making sure that they didn't accidentally touch the plant. Scanning the environment, right? Scanning the environment for danger. If someone ate a new food and that person became sick, they and those around them knew to never eat that food again, right? That food was unsafe. If a certain animal tried to attack them, they would recognize that that is not a friendly animal. We need to not only be constantly on the lookout for that animal and a possible attack, but we also need to put precautions into our lives to prevent or guard against an attack from that animal. So this was the amygdala. Scary experience, process that emotion, never want to feel that again. I'm going to prevent it by always scanning my environment and avoiding that situation again, or even situations that are similar to it. And so we learned to stay alive because of this lizard brain and the amygdala. It kept us safe, and the negativity bias was formed. So our brain, many years ago, was actually programmed to pay attention to negative things, to things that felt unsafe. Because if you pay attention, you will survive. It was plain and simple. Pay attention to what's negative, avoid it, and you survive. But we live in a very different world and we have a very different brain than we did back then. In today's world, we are rarely afraid of eating something that's going to kill us or encountering a random tiger in the street. But that amygdala and that lizard brain and its negativity bias is still very much present, strong, active, alive. And in fact, it can become really overactive. And an overactive amygdala can wreak havoc on our mental health from severe anxiety, like debilitating anxiety, depression, many other things. But in its milder forms, it can also prevent us from doing things that we desire because it sends danger signals to the body and to the mind when we even think about doing that thing that it has categorized as dangerous and unsafe. These imprints, as I mentioned, are often unconscious. We don't even recognize they're there. We think and respond before we can even recognize that we're acting on this unconscious thought or belief. And the only way out of it is to start to pay attention to our thoughts and our behavior, to bring awareness to them and to start understanding what's going on behind the curtain. So, for example, let's say you were 5 years old. You were in your living room, singing at the top of your lungs, dancing around, making lots of noise. And your mother came in and she was angry and she yelled at you and she said you were being too loud and you had to pipe down. If that experience generated uncomfortable emotions in you, like shame, fear, feeling unlovable, feeling like being yourself was not okay, your amygdala stored that information. It said, okay, it's not safe to be myself, or it's not safe to be loud. It's not safe to express what's inside of me. And now you have created an unconscious belief or beliefs about what is safe for you in the world. And this could show up as things like being myself is unsafe. Girls should be quiet. I am not skilled at singing, at dancing. Being loud is unsafe. You store this in your unconscious belief patterns and it's imprinted on your neurological system. And now you're 50 years old. And every time you even think about public speaking or singing in front of anyone, even your partner or your kids, or just speaking up for what you want in your life, you feel paralyzed. Your heart might race. You might get a pit in your stomach. Your head might feel like it's about to pop off your shoulders. Maybe you get a cold sweat. Lots of different physical sensations may come with this. And then the negative thought loops start showing up. And you think things like, I can't do that. I'm not capable of that. That's just not who I am. I'm not good at it. What will other people say? Will they talk about me or judge me? Or even things like, I don't deserve to do that. Other people, that's for other people. Maybe they're more trained or they're more educated or they're more skilled or talented. It can show up as excuses like, I don't have time. I'm too old. It's too much money. My partner thinks it's a bad idea. These are all forms of resistance, and it can just show up in countless different ways. Procrastination, self-sabotage, imposter syndrome. The list goes on. And it's sneaky because it seems like when you're breaking out in the cold sweat and you're thinking things like, I don't have time, or I'm too old, or I'm not good enough, it seems like your body and your mind are telling you, screaming at you, this is a bad idea. But really, it's just your amygdala. It's your lizard brain. It's your negativity bias that's trying to keep you safe because you had an experience in your past that was interpreted as unsafe. And what this does is set you up for self-limiting beliefs or core delusions. And I have an episode on limiting beliefs that I will put in the show notes. It's a really good one. And in case you're just a little unclear on what that looks like. But these are basically false narratives. They're things we tell ourselves about who we are, about what we're capable of, even about what we want, that are untrue, that are based on these core delusions that we have developed often in childhood, sometimes in response to societal pressures, sometimes after a negative, feedback or criticism. And we create these beliefs about ourselves, and then those beliefs then create thoughts, and those thoughts then create feelings, and those feelings then create action or inaction. And then that creates our whole life, right? That's the pattern of our whole life. So, we have to be aware. We have to be aware of where we are coming from, what is going on that we don't even know is going on. We don't see it because we're not necessarily paying attention, right? So, how do we move past this? How do you know if you're being called to something in your life, to do something in your life, but self-limiting beliefs or those core delusions are blocking that desire? How do you know the difference, right? Maybe I'm being called to do this thing and it's a self-limiting belief that's blocking my desire, or maybe I just really don't want to do that thing, right? And that can be really confusing, especially if we are caught in the trance, in the loop of those limiting beliefs about ourselves. So, one way that we can start moving out of those patterns is to adopt something that's called Shoshin in Zen Buddhism. And in English, this concept translates into the idea of beginner's mind. And the easiest way for me personally, I hope you to understand this concept, is to think about experiencing the world from the perspective of a 2-year-old. So if you have had any experience with small children, whether you are a parent, a grandparent, an aunt, an uncle, however way you have come in contact with small children, you will likely have noticed that they are endlessly fascinated by everything. They don't put things into categories of good or bad. They don't have any concept of being incapable. If you've ever seen a little 2-year-old try to lift something that's like 50 pounds with, all the determination in the world. And they don't label things and decide that they only have one function, right? A box is a box, and it's also a hideout, and it's a train, and it's a baby carriage. It's a surface for art. It's so many things, right? This is beginner's mind. No labels, no categories, no limits, only curiosity, wonder, and experimentation. That's what they're doing, right? They're experimenting with all these things. And practicing beginner's mind asks us to approach each thought and experience with fresh eyes, curiosity, and openness, as if we were experiencing it for the first time, as if we were that 2-year-old. And what happens in midlife is this, well, I've already experienced that, been there, done that. I know. I know myself. I know other people. I know what the experience is like. I know, right? So we decide that we know the answers to all of these things, but in doing so, we're actually blocking ourselves from the deeper meaning and experience of what is possible. So beginner's mind asks us to let go of what we think we know about ourselves and the experiences that we've had, and to be curious about how we might feel about it if we released those old patterns of thought and became curious about what could be. It asks us to be playful and imaginative. It asks us to explore our thoughts and behaviors and ask ourselves questions about what we believe, what we really believe, not the belief that just jumps to your mind immediately, but questioning that. Is that what I really believe? It asks us to release judgments and expectations, not only judgments of ourselves or expectations of ourselves, but of others and of experiences. Um, and it asks us to let go, right? So there's something in yoga called one of the yamas and niyamas called non-attachment, which means when we grasp or cling on to something, even just an idea of who we are, we then shut ourselves off to the deeper wisdom that lies in releasing that attachment and being super present with the thing, with ourselves, with the moment, with the experience. So that's what beginner's mind is asking you to do. It's asking you to release your attachment to what you think you know and become open and receptive to what could be. Okay. So, how does this relate to purpose, and how can we practice this in our daily lives? If we want to move towards purpose, one of the biggest things that we can do to stay in beginner's mind and start uncovering our dharma or our soul's purpose is to notice resistance and question it. So, for example, if someone says to you, you'd be really good at fill in the blank, you'd be really good at starting a podcast, you'd be really good at being a speaker, a photographer, a coach, a teacher, a therapist. I could go on. And your gut reaction is hard pass. No way. That's impossible for me. Pay attention. I myself am intimately connected with this concept because I can't tell you how many times in my life that my gut reaction was, no way, that's not for me. I don't like it. I don't want it. I wouldn't be good at it. Fill in the negative statement, only to come to find out after a longer period of time than is necessary because I was stuck in resistance, that actually I do want that thing. I would be good at that thing. I am capable of that thing, right? So the resistance is a signal. It's a signal that you absolutely could be doing that thing and that maybe you should be doing that thing. So bringing beginner's mind to the table, what core beliefs do you hold, and are they really true? When you think about doing something, or someone tells you you're good at something, or maybe good at something, what belief immediately rises to the surface? And can you examine it and ask yourself, what if the things that I believe about myself aren't really true? What if I am good at photography, coaching, teaching, writing, speaking, riding a horse? That's my newest limiting belief that I'm busting through, right? I'm 46 years old, just learning to ride a horse. What if I am capable of more than I think I am? What if I could run that marathon, change my career, go back to school? Whatever it is that either someone repeatedly says to you, you find people repeatedly saying to you, or a thought or a desire that is repeatedly showing up for you in some way, but you are metaphorically smacking it down because you are caught in these core delusions about what is possible for you. Be curious and let your imagination run wild. So when these things come up and you immediately say, no way, not for me, can't do it, when you recognize that resistance, take a breath, take a moment, and then ask yourself the questions. What if I am capable of more than I think of? What if I could do that thing? What if I am good at it? Where did this belief come from? Maybe even asking that question. Sometimes dismantling the belief requires you to understand where it came from. Where did this belief come from? And is it really true? Get curious, get so curious, and then let your imagination run wild, right? Think about what it would be like to do that thing and really visualize it, right? This is a great space for meditation where you just close your eyes and think about yourself doing that thing. And it might come with mixed emotions, right? You might still feel the cold sweat and the pit in your stomach, but you might also feel a level of excitement, or you might feel like more alive. You might feel more energetic, right? So really, pay attention to all the sensations that are present. That negativity bias, along with those negative thought patterns that we run in our minds, the physical sensations that come with it can be very strong. And sometimes they're stronger than some of these other sensations that I'm mentioning. And so we respond very quickly to that strongest sensation that we're experiencing. But let yourself be with that cold sweat or that pit in the stomach. Breathe through it and then ask yourself, is there anything else there? Is there some other feeling or sensation underneath this gut fear response? And then the next thing to do is experiment, right? Back to the 2-year-old, the beginner's mind. Experiment by actually trying out whatever it is. And it doesn't have to be on a large scale. Let's use photography as an example. Get yourself a little used camera, go out into nature and just start snapping pictures and playing, right? This is about play. Back to the 2-year-old. What do? They experiment through play. Go out there and play. And I will also link my episode on play if you don't know what your version of play is, because play and purpose are very, very closely linked to one another. So go out there and experiment. Don't set any expectations for what the experience will be like or what the outcome of the experience will be. Just go out there to have the experience and do the thing. And this will allow you to release any judgments about the outcome. If it's taking pictures, about how good or bad the pictures are, just go out and have the experience and then notice what it's like to have the experience. Try different forms of this little experiment. So if you're a writer, if you think, oh gosh, I've always thought about writing a book, for example, well, maybe you try writing in a journal. Or maybe you try writing an informal blog post, or maybe you try writing a longer Instagram post, right? Again, this doesn't have to be so serious. Often when we talk about, finding purpose and meaning in our lives, it can get heavy and serious, and we want answers and we want to leap to the conclusion. But it it for most people, it doesn't work that way. It's a step-by-step process. It's this process of play and experimentation and getting into our bodies and feeling those subtle sensations and following those subtle sensations, following those playful experiences to the next piece of the puzzle, right? To the next step in the journey. So please, try to take the pressure and expectations off of your shoulders and just do the darn thing. Do the darn thing in any way that seems fun and playful to you and easy. Fun, playful, and easy. And see where it takes you. How do you feel when you're doing it? Or do you feel more alive? Are you more in flow? Do you feel like yourself? Do you feel lit up? Are you excited? Are you fascinated, right? The path of fascination. Be curious, not just about the action, but what the action produces inside of you. Okay, so that's beginner's mind and purpose. But I want to give you a few tips for beginner's mind in other areas of your life because I love this concept and I think it makes our lives better. And I think practicing it in other ways will also help you practice it when it comes to the idea of purpose and meaning and purpose in your life. So, how do we do this in relationships? Instead of assuming, so let's say we're talking about our partner or our sibling or a close friend, right? Somebody we know really well. And we maybe assume that we know how they will act or react to a situation or what they mean when they are describing something to us. And sometimes I'm not pointing any fingers, but tap out a little bit, right? Maybe we're not paying attention too closely because we think we already know. We know what they're going to say. We know what they think. We know what they mean. What if instead we approach that conversation with tremendous curiosity and we listen to them like it's the first time we're hearing them talk about this topic. So let's say we're talking about your partner. Oh, You're listening to them like you did on your first date, when you were captivated by every word that came out of their mouth. You knew nothing about them and you really wanted to learn about who they were. And so you listened with like deep, deep listening, a tremendous amount of intentionality in your listening. Can you listen to the people in your life in that way? I wouldn't say every time, but can you set the intention to listen in that way as often as possible, and not just to the close people in your life, but to everyone you encounter? Can you hear the meaning behind the words? Can you hear the emotion behind the words? Can you get curious with questions? Can you lean in with your body, showing this act of curiosity and really wanting to know and understand this person? It does deepen your connection. And so that is a form of beginner's mind when it comes to relationships. Beginner's mind can also be used during challenging times, right? So we are all experiencing challenging times in one way or another in our lives, throughout our lives, right? Life tends to be one long string of challenging times in different ways, one way or the other. So rather than labeling a situation as this is good, I like it, or this is bad, I don't like it, and I want to avoid it, can we stay open? Can we look at that challenging situation? Can we take a step back from it, step out of that, this is bad, I don't want it, I'm resisting it and pushing it away? And can we get curious about it? Can we get curious about what it's here to teach us, what we can learn, how it can help us to grow? And it's what we can learn about ourselves, what we can learn about others, what we can learn about the world. Like, what deeper truth could arise from this experience that I would maybe prefer not to have in my life, but it's here anyway. So since it's here anyway, I might as well take advantage of it. I might as well use this experience, to my benefit in learning about myself, about others, about the world, and taking those lessons and carrying them forward with me. And then daily life is another beautiful opportunity to use beginner's mind, and it will help you to feel more calm and more present. It will decrease anxiety, and that's by simply noticing the small and ordinary things as if they were extraordinary. So not taking anything for granted, right? That's what I'm talking about here. So we take so much for granted because we have experienced the same things over and over for many years of our lives, right? These more small and ordinary things, like the smell of your coffee in the morning, or how the sunlight hits the trees, or the way the waves kind of, the way the leaves kind of wave at you when the wind is blowing through them, that fluttering of the leaves, the feeling of your breath, right? Just the sensation of the rising and falling of your chest and your belly. Maybe that pause that you can take. So the power of the pause, this will be another podcast episode that is going to come out that I will get into more in detail, but there is tremendous power in pausing. And we live in a society where pausing is not necessarily put up on a pedestal. There's a lot of P's going on there. We're a go, go, go kind of world. And we really can lose we forget how powerful a pause is in our daily life, and the magic that can exist in just taking a moment to be really, really present. Because that pause, that curiosity, that wonder, all the components, the experimentation, the play, all of these components of beginner's mind turn ordinary life into something really magical and sacred. And so if in nowhere else other than just taking a pause and being really present and bringing curiosity to the present moment, if you do nothing else but that, you will be using beginner's mind and you will be reaping the benefits of this practice. All right, my friends, I hope that that was helpful. Expect a blog article on this topic. And like I said, sign up for the newsletter and you will get the link to that. And if you have any questions, as always, email me or DM me on Instagram. I'm having trouble with my words today, so I apologize for that. It's a rainy day. I think my brain isn't functioning on full capacity. But have a wonderful week, my friends, and I look forward to hearing from you. And practice that beginner's mind. Practice being curious, non-judgmental, experimental, playful, open, and ask yourself, is that really true? Is what I believe about myself really true? And what would my life look like if it weren't? All right. Have fun, friends. Talk to you next week. Thank you for joining me on this journey of self-discovery here at the Midlife Purpose Project. I hope today's conversation sparked something deep inside of you, made you laugh, or reminded you that you are never alone. Remember, it's never too late to reconnect with your soul's purpose and live a life of meaning. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and review the show, or share it with someone who could use a little inspiration. It really helps the show reach more women and helps me keep the content ad-free. Join me next time as we continue to explore what it means to live with purpose in midlife.